your obsession with comedy or your interest in comedy goes way back to when you were a kid, and you got to do something that I dreamed of doing but never got to do, which is you got to go to a live taping of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
Oh, yeah.
And that's something I never experienced.
Oh,
Can you
wow.
tell me what that was like?
Yes. I was 13. I had just been bar mitzvahed, and my brother Max had gone to spring break and been bumped 3 times. And back then in the
From the audience.
No, I'm sorry. That made it sound like my brother Max was a guest on the Tonight Show with Carson. No, he'd been bumped by the airline.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Flying on spring break, and so he had gotten these tickets. I don't know if they were round trip, but they afforded my mother and I to go to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
My brother couldn't use them because he was starting a job in Florida. So he gave them to us. We used them to go to Los Angeles, stayed with my cousin Della. We waited in line and got tickets to get into but I was 13. You had to be 16 to get into a live taping, but I was already 5'11", or almost 6 feet.
Right.
And so my mother said, he's 16. And then I got in and I said, oh my God, we made it. And then an usher said, excuse me, how old are you? And my mother got right in her face and she said, do you think I would take a child into something as important as the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson? And my mother, I mean, the lying.
God
was
bless
just,
her.
Yeah, she really got
I
her
want
face.
your job. Be great if she got that kid fired.
Yeah,
and ruined
she
her
was
life.
so convincing. I felt like I was 16. And
Yeah.
I had just turned 13. And anyhow, it couldn't have been a better. First of all, Johnny did the monologue and he screwed up one of the lines and retook it. And then when they went to break, he said, oh, I really blew the shit out of that joke. And I said, oh my gosh, he swore.
Yeah.
And you didn't hear Johnny Carson.
Well, you know what? I talked to
swear.
Robert Smigel, told me that he went to a taping of Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson, when he knew it wouldn't, because it was pre-taped, said shit in front of the crowd and they went wild. Wow. So that I think that was something he liked to do, because everyone thought, back then the idea of someone that you knew on TV that intimately saying the word shit was impossible.
Yes.
And so that must have been electrifying.
It was electrifying. And then the guest was Carrie Fisher and Gary Shandling.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. So Princess Leia at her Leiaist. And then this.
And Gary at his Shandlingist.
Oh my gosh. And then this comedian who I only knew from the Tonight Show. And he was so funny. And then he did this bit with, it wasn't a bit, I guess, but it came off as a bit with Carrie Fisher, where he says, I know your parents, Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. Do you know my parents, Irv and Muriel Shandling? And I was in love. I was like, here's this guy who's Jewish, neurotic, and miserable, yet he's flirting with Carrie Fisher. And it was that was the thing that I always found so interesting about comedians. They really had nothing to speak of in terms of being attractive to women, but they had all this confidence in it, and it really captured me at a very, very young age. I was like, that is the only way I'm ever going to get married, is if I'm super funny like Shandling or somebody like that.
That's fascinating, because I realize, I've talked about this a lot, but I think that kids naturally, I'm going to back it up because I think this is the analogy I've made, but I think when you play a video game, you're told, here are your powers or here are your weapons. You get like an inventory.
Yeah.
And I think all kids throughout history take an inventory early on. And I remember my feeling as a kid for me was, what are all the necessary things I need, and not having them? Like, do I have the looks that a girl? No. Am I an athlete? No. Am I this? Am I not? And I just remember kept going through. And then when I found out that I could make people laugh, thinking, all right, I've got this. I'm going to develop the fuck out of this.
Yes.
I'm going to.
Yes.
And then being able to, and mostly being interested in, I want that girl to like me. So.
Yeah.
And then the big barrier is she's laughing really hard, but I see her going to the dance with that other guy.
Oh, yeah. But he's not as funny. Or his comedy is not as well worked out.
Right, exactly. No, He has no comedy, but he has a developed body.
Yeah.
Who needs that?
Yeah.
My shallow chest should be enough for anyone.
And
my wasted legs? What's wrong with these? My 19th century cough? The little bits of pink foam from dissolving lung? What's wrong with that?
Why are you saying those things, though?
My dad took care of everyone but me. A brilliant scientist who never noticed that I was dying of consumption.
You were the control experiment.
I was the control experiment.
I think consumption is my favorite old-timey disease because a lot of people will go tuberculosis, but the people who are familiar go consumption.
Consumption. Also, I love...
What?
It's true. Oh, it's total. I'm totally with Gary on... Look, you and I speak the exact same language. I like that people used to have stuff called the flux.
Yeah. Or
And-
they'd call you a lunger.
Yeah, a lunger.
If you
had a lung,
consumption or
if you had consumption, they call you a
tuberculosis,
lunger.
Yeah.
But also, I love that when you got sick back then, they would apply a poultice. They would apply a mustard poultice to your chest, which basically means, just covering your chest with
Vicks
mustard.
Vapo rub.
Yeah, exactly. but they did it for like someone would get shot in the head. I believe when Lincoln was dying of a bullet the size of an Oreo cookie in his brain, they were like, apply a poultice. A mustard poultice will save the president.
Did it work?
Kinda. Because when he died, he smelled like a hot dog. And people weren't quite as sad.
I'm sure there were other poultices. There was the mustard.
I always hear about mustard.
The remoulade poultice. The tapenade poultice. That way he doesn't pull through, but we have a dip. We have a dipping sauce.
No, at the end,
Triscuits.
after Lincoln died, everyone sat around and they were very sad. And Seward said, now he belongs to the ages. And then somehow someone produced a bag of tortilla chips. And they just started dipping into this stuff. Little salsa. They all just start crunching.
God, what the...
Mary Lincoln comes in. What are you doing? Well, we can't let this go to waste. The coffin isn't here yet.